thanks for coming on the Need to Know comedy show. Thanks, Charlie. Um, I'm going to ask you, so you grew up in Swindon, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm
your
still
mother was a Jehovah's Witness, was she?
Yes, my mum is a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, she's still very active.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
And did you get involved in that when you were growing up?
Yes, I was a former God saleswoman.
Were you?
Yeah, I was really shit at it, really, really bad at it. But I did try to sell God to many, many people in the neighbourhood. And then you drive out to other little villages and do it, dressed like an Amish person. It was horrific.
Really? Knocking on doors?
Yeah. Are you religious?
No, I was brought up in the Catholic religion. I was an altar boy for a year. I hated it, actually. I got stage fright. And at the end of a year of being an altar boy, we were given a little day out in a Butlins type place. But unfortunately, I went over my bicycle handlebars and smashed my face, so I couldn't even go. So I thought that was God punishing me for not taking being an altar boy seriously.
Yeah, I've often felt that God is punishing me. I still think he might be, but no, I remember knocking on people that I went to school with. You'd have to knock on the door of like the school bully and just be like, I'm just going to do my little spiel about Jesus whilst wearing this skirt. My mum's behind me, and then hope that on Monday you wouldn't get your head kicked in too badly. So yeah, it's pretty cringe, isn't it? Religion has. I can imagine you in a little altar boys thing. How long were you doing that for?
I just did a year, and then I was kind of asked to do another year. So my mother was sick; she had cancer, and we knew she was going to die. And the priest wanted me to be an altar boy for another year, so that I'd be an altar boy at her funeral. Well, how nice of him! But I refused.
That's a tough gig right there, altar boy at a funeral. I mean, I suppose the aim is that you just sing and everybody cries. To be honest, like, I'm not really into a lot of religious music, but that stuff where they get the little kids there singing, it does really hit you in the chest. You're like, children singing. It's all very exploitative, isn't it?
It's very much so, yeah. But I did go to mass every Sunday until I was 18, until I left home.
Yeah. And so how did you get into comedy? I'm interviewing you. Do you know what I've
done? Yeah. That makes a change. Yeah. No, I was in a band for about 5 years till I was about 25. What kind of
music?
It was very like New Order-ish. It started off as a New Order-y sounding band and ended up being rockabilly.
Oh my God, fuck off. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, you can swear, yeah.
I'm not religious anymore, and my mum doesn't follow my work, so I'm like, fuck it, I'm free. But yeah, there's a pub in Holloway Road. I mean, obviously, I don't know if it's still open now, it might have been shut down, but it's a rockabilly pub, and I used to go there a lot and like go out in Camden and stuff. And I love that whole style and that whole scene, like the Vamps and stuff. And that's super. I play the drums.
Do you play the drums, yeah?
Yeah, very badly. And I started a Riot Girl punk band called the Femme Fatales, and we were all dancers and performance artists, and we just used to do these shows that would descend into fucking chaos. Like, none of us can play our instruments properly. We end up smashing up the whole thing and dry humping our instruments and then just fucking off.
Sounds amazing.
What was your band called?
Band called Guernica, like after the painting, the Picasso painting.
Wow. I don't think I know that painting. Can you describe it to me?
Well, it's a painting to commemorate the town of Guernica in the Basque region of Spain was bombed by the fascists. And Picasso painted this massive painting of kind of like a bomb going off, and there's like horses in agony and bulls' heads and people screaming and blah. And it's quite a good painting, yeah. It's in Madrid, though, so it was quite controversial.
Look it up and see what it's like. And so you were inspired by that to name your band that? What was the connection?
Well, I didn't actually name the band. They were named before I joined. It was the bass player. I don't know. I guess he was looking at the painting and liked it, and then liked the idea that it was an anti-fascist painting, and Good name,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
not a great name for DJs to say and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do people struggle with pronouncing it? I always find
Yeah. Yeah. So in that sense, it probably wasn't a good
And
name.
so
But
you were performing in a band, and then how did you get towards like?
well, we used to actually get comedians to support the band sometimes. Not that there were many comedians in Ireland at the time, but we'd one or two. And then a friend of mine, Paul Tylak, who was really into comedy, did it once, and then I hung out with him, and we started doing a double act. It was more like a sketch comedy we did, and it started from there. The band broke up, and I thought at 25 I'm too old to do music anymore, so I went for comedy.
Oh, that's so brilliant. I love people's comedy stories because they often involve failing at something else. And I love that, like, so I'm 32 and I'm going to say that openly, and my agent is probably screaming somewhere right now that I've done that because this is going to go online. But like, I'm starting to embrace my age, right? But like, I tell other people that and they look at me like I've just done a crap on the floor, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, because I'm surrounded by like quite young people at the moment on the comedy circuit, or have been in the past, and like,
Yeah.
I just think it takes you a while sometimes to get to your thing. But I also love that young people think that being 32, like teenagers, 19 to 26-year-olds, think that being in your 30s is really old. And I love that you at 25 are just like, my life is over, I need a new career path. So young. Like,
I really did think, yeah, but after 25 you shouldn't be in a band. And then years later I read about Jarvis Cocker not even making it till he was about 32 or something.
I console myself with stories about people. Like, I regularly, when I'm having stress about what I'm doing, read a list of like people who didn't make their best work until they were over 50. Just so I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine. it's going to be okay. Because I think this is the thing about being creative, right? Is like, people always expect maybe sort of like a linear trajectory, or like there's this fallacy that it just happens and it's all kind of shiny. But like, I think people don't realize it's like you can even get a bit of success and then just fuck up and disappear. You know who I regularly think about?
No, who?
Pat Sharp. From like this TV show when I was a kid, and he used to do Pat Sharp's Fun House or something, and I always think about children's presenters that were like the big thing at a certain time, and you think that you're important and you're sexy and they're all over the sun for maybe doing something naughty or whatever happens, and then it's like fast forward a decade later and no one knows who the fuck you are. All these people are growing up, and like when I talk to some people now about my references, because I always liked really old stuff anyway, like old rock and roll or metal music, they just talk about they're just like, who? Like, it just goes out of date, and it makes you realize that no matter what you do, you will always be unimportant, which is
Absolutely.
exactly what I tell my niece and nephew, and my sister tells me I should stop talking to them.
No matter what you do, you will always end up unimportant.
You'll always become obsolete to someone.
Yeah, that's true. But listen, come here. Did you do a circus performance? I read that on your website.
Yeah. So I ran away and joined the circus. When I say that, like, did you ever have a teacher that just sort of sorts? That's just great. Like, everybody usually has like one great teacher story. Do you?
Yeah, I think in primary school I had a very good teacher.
Yeah, well, I got lucky and mine was in secondary school, and he just gave, like, my life was sort of falling apart and my family were falling apart and everything was a bit nuts, and he gave me a brochure for like this circus school. It's like classic middle class, like, problem child, let's funnel them into the arts, that'll be great. She'll never make any money or really learn how to look after herself, and will probably have deep-rooted mental health problems, but here you go, juggle. and like, but you know what? I'm fucking grateful to him, because I must have been about 16 and I went down to Bristol. I still remember it was pissing it down with rain, and I went on my own to like this city that I'd never been to for the first time, from Swindon, and to this little audition, and I had to juggle and I was shit, and then I had to get on trapeze and I was shit, and then I did a monologue, and even then I think I wanted to do comedy, but I just didn't know that you could, and I made the woman laugh, and then I got a place on the course, and that was my equivalent to A-levels, and it sort of completely changed the direction of my life, because I don't know what I would have done. Probably not have got pregnant like a lot of girls in our town, because I wasn't really into stuff like that, and I was very disgusting and a bit of a dirty girl. I don't think that would have happened. I was a bit gross.
Is getting pregnant an option when you go to career guidance?
Well, our careers advisor was just like, do you like, it was pretty straight up, you know. I went to quite a rough comprehensive in Swindon, and I changed schools twice. But the first school, he was like, do you want to be a lorry driver or an English teacher? Well, and then there was a receptionist. That was it. You could be a receptionist. That was kind of a respectable job. And lots of girls at our school dropped out really young and had babies with older boys. And I wasn't really interested in boys. I was more interested in girls. So the pregnancy thing wasn't going to happen. I just didn't know what to do. I probably would have been an alcoholic, I think. And
yeah,
that would have been my thing. So instead I went to the circus school in Bristol, and it was great. Like, I think it gave me a discipline and like a structure. And I think there was a lot of wild kids on our course, because there's something about doing something that's very, very like intense training and involves a lot of risk. And like, I just became really disciplined. I'd wake up every day and just go and work really hard at it. And I became like an aerialist. So I used to do rope and Spanish web in the circus for a bit.
Wow.
That feels like ages ago now. It's a weird thing to do. But even then, you know, a lot of my pieces were comedic. So I would put music to them, and I'd kind of try and do something funny. Like, they always involved me sort of getting tangled in the rope and falling apart, or being a silly character. And sometimes I used to do Victoria Wood skits with a really bad northern accent. It was so embarrassing. I used to put my hair in like one of these like little handkerchief things and pretend I was smoking a fag in the kitchen.
So, like Dinner Ladies or something.
Yeah, because I loved that series. Yeah, I was really inspired by her. She's probably the only, like, her and French and Saunders were the only women I'd seen doing comedy. And do you know what? It was two Irish jugglers who were stoned in the kitchen said to me, like, you're funny, but they were like, do you want to do comedy? Because they were like, you'll just end up fat and alone.
Really?
And I was just like so stunned. And like, so they had actually admitted, they didn't do the whole women aren't funny thing, but they'd implied that like, if you're going to be a funny woman, you're going to end up just sad and alone, eating cake, crying. And so I was just like, oh, I'll go into dance then instead. And so I ended up becoming a dancer and a circus performer for many years. But I always loved comedy, you know. Did you have like a mentor or someone who got you like got you into the subject?
My friend Paul Tylack, who I met when he was about 20, he was about 19 or something, I was 22 or something. We just met randomly in a place. It was weird, actually. I met this guy Paul, who just come over from London, just had run away from his father and came to London to see his Irish mother, who turned out she was an alcoholic. So he'd nowhere to, he just was on his own. And we met, and he had a water pistol, and he took it out and went, I don't know, put your hands up or something. And I had a water pistol as well in my back pocket. And it was just like that moment when we went, that's insane. We're like mates for life. Do you know what I mean?
So nice.
And he was really into comedy. So he was like into watching lots of Steve Martin films and stuff like that, which I didn't know about. And yeah, he got me into it.
That's great. It's nice when you have someone to do stuff with. When you mentioned about being in a double act, I do feel sometimes everything that I've done before I started doing stand-up a couple of years ago was, I can't believe it took me that fucking long as well to actually have the goal to do it. But because I felt like I've been doing comedy in lots of other ways, you know. But when I finally took the leap, I remember the shock of doing something completely on your own. Like, compared to like, I loved, you know, when you've got someone to bounce off, it felt easier to be funny because you're interactive, and suddenly it's like this process. I remember like pacing up and down outside like pubs, just like I've got everything sort of sweating off my hand, and then I'm like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And it's just you. And I remember like having to give myself these pep talks in the toilet just to be able to do it, because I was like, I'd always plan B. I was like, if they hate you, what's the nearest escape route? Like, how do you get out of the pub if it all goes to shit? And then I started doing this thing where I would like have to try and practice my set beforehand to a stranger so that I knew that I could say it. And I had this big wall about speaking in front of people because I'd spent years being a physical performer now and was terrified. So I used to create these people that were like heroes of the gig, and I basically just approached them in the pub garden and be like, can I do some comedy at you? And they'd be like, what? And I did it once to someone in Pret a Manger, and then I did it to this couple who I hope are still together because they were really lovely, in the garden of this pub. And I do my set at them, and then if they laughed and like, or even if they looked a bit awkward because the whole situation was a bit weird, I was like, okay, I can do it to you, I can do it to a room full of other people, this will be easier. So yeah. Did you ever do stand-up?
Oh no, I do stand up now, but it took me a while. I did sketch comedy and musical comedy maybe for a few years. So it was really, I found it really difficult to actually break into stand up. I found that terrifying to be, and also to be just using my own voice because I was used to being characters, but to be me, that took me a while to get used to.
Do you think it's easier when you're older?
Only from experience. I mean, I've experience of all sorts of different kinds of rooms, and I've done all the wrong things. You know, I've died on my arse because I made ridiculous mistakes, and I know not to do them now. And so I'm quite calm going on stage now, but I used to be terrified. So, I mean, I think, yeah, you know what's really weird though is when you're younger, everybody wants to review you and blah, blah, blah. And then as you get older, I feel I'm much better as a comedian, but nobody, you're not the new thing. So,
yeah, I think the industry has that. And I just think in general, I think that's a wider societal issue of like ageism. Like, we're just so nuts about that. Like, you see that all the time. But I think there's something about the shiny and new that people just get attracted to because everybody wants to find the next big thing. But I can see that even from some peers that I know of, like, you get to a certain point, you do really well in competitions, then you're like shiny and new, you get signed by an agent, it's all very exciting, and then it goes through like a different process again of like actually trying to get any work and like, can you really make it in this industry? And then the different levels of that of like, oh, you know, you get something optioned or picked up, and then you realize that like most of the job is rejection. Like, nothing, you'll go to like 10 million meetings and nothing happens. Most people won't remember you. You get put forward for weird stuff as well. Like, I remember getting asked to do self-tapes when I first started, and I'm just like, you do know that I can't act. Like, I can do me in everything. Like, that's
yeah.
And like just filming yourself in your own garden saying some of the worst lines ever. I think I was yelling about pigs or something about like, don't cut off his penis over and over again. Like, just in the garden. And my neighbours must be like, is she having a breakdown? And I didn't even fucking get the part as well. Like, you know, so it is a weird one. And I can imagine, like, that's why I've been told before not to tell people my age, because people might think that I'm younger. But I want to be honest about it, because I'm just like, it did take me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, but I also don't think that I'm old. And I think I have a long time to get good at something, and I think the best comics like do have a lot of experience, have a lot of maturity, they know themselves a little bit better. And it is just one of those skills that like you have to do it a lot to get good. So yeah. I'm likely to be a bit older when I finally get better at my craft.
Yeah, but you don't think as well, I think you got to have a little bit of life experience to have something to talk about. You know, something really, something really to talk about, as opposed to just talking about video games and...
Or Tinder jokes, dating jokes.
Yeah.
Driver, you know, the general things that go in the cycle, definitely. I think that's what I love about... Like the comics I love, like, you know, I love some more in America. I like a lot of American comics. Wanda Sykes, Maria Bamford's great, and it's like she took so long to accelerate in industry terms. But in terms of her stand-up, it was always great. But she also has been on this like mad mental health journey, and I think the way that she's found a way to translate and communicate specifically who she is and what her unique experience is has just been refined over time. It just gets better and better. Like her recent special is just like howling, but it's also really soulful, and it's about something, and it's about humanity.
Yeah, she's amazing. I actually gigged with her twice in Dublin. Yeah, she's so nice as well. And
Yeah, I saw her at, I'm trying to think, Leicester Square maybe. Someone got me a ticket. It was great.
yeah, you write a lot, don't you, as well, Charlie? You you write scripts and
Yes, I feel like that's what I've been doing more of. But then, when the world gives you a pandemic, what do you do, eh? I don't really have the end of that saying yet, but that should be the new "When life gives you lemons," which should be like, "When life gives you a pandemic, wear
yeah,
a fucking mask." That could be,
yeah. I
that could be
don't know
great.
what to make. It's I don't know what to replace lemonade with, but yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
know, you've got to try and find the right cadence. Um, yeah, so with live stuff going, I think I just felt like I should focus on that more. But I had some great, like, lucky opportunities. So, like, I think because I did well in the competitions and I signed and got put in front of people, they were like, "Oh, well, we want to have, we'll trial you writing on something." So I got
mhm.
into some writers' rooms trialing, and that was really great and terrifying. Just like around a room
Yeah,
of like giants that you really respect, and you're like sweating, and you're like, everything that I'm going to pitch might be a bit shit.
yeah, yeah. Is it really? Are you just nervous about putting your idea forward and in front of these people who are like just great writers?
Yeah, obviously, because you're less experienced. But do you know what? Good people that are really nice, and that's who I've met so far, is like really nice people that are quite supportive and they want to develop new talent. So basically, you're not going to learn what that process is like of making
Yeah,
something collaboratively, making a TV show collaboratively, until you're in the room. So they're not judging too harshly, I don't think. But like, I think I did have to get over all of that anxiety and realize that, like, once you settle in and you actually just chat to people, similar to you describing your double act to a friend, is I think comedy comes from like play and from feeling relaxed. You can't really come up with great ideas if you're really uptight. So I think the more you feel comfortable to just say any old shit and sit in the shit of like, I've just said something, it's not very funny, we'll move on from that. And it doesn't devalue me as a human being. And then you just try the next joke and then that's cool. So I did a bit of that, which was really great. And then I've been writing my own scripts during lockdown. And
yeah. Have you
yeah,
shot any stuff on your own during lockdown?
I'm shit at stuff like that. No, my script has just got options, which is so exciting, but I'm just learning what that means. So that means that, like, it may get made, but it also might not. But it is exciting.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that's amazing.
but no, do you do online content? I find it really.
I've done a few at the beginning of lockdown. I was really into it, and I did a few, yeah, on my own. But in the last two
Was
weeks, I've
it
been shooting
characters?
a web
Sorry,
series with,
was it
with
characters?
sorry.
Was it characters or stand up you were doing?
No, characters. Yeah. Characters. I did a couple of things where I was in therapy with myself and my alter ego. There was three of us.
Wow. Oh, I'd love to watch some. This is so exciting. And then you said you're doing a web series. Are you in the web series as well, or have you just written?
Yeah. I just got contacted by a girl in New York who's shooting a web series called Interconnected, where she's shooting one bit in New York with the actresses out of work, and so I think she's doing one in India as well. And so in Ireland, I wrote with her and a small crew, and it's all been shot on iPhones, which is it's wild. Like they have a few iPhones, and the sound recording is in an iPhone in your back pocket in a little clip mic. It's all iPhones. It looks good though, so looking forward.
Great. Well, you could do amazing stuff on things like that. I think this is the thing where it does show my age and my sort of slightly Amish upbringing, is that, like, we weren't allowed anything for ages. And then I didn't get a smartphone. Like, I'm just a late bloomer. Like, I've just taken a long time to grow up. And so I didn't get a smartphone until 2016. And it was because I was traveling to India and I thought it'd be really nice to have pictures and send people pictures.
Mm.
Um, so, you know,
Oh,
I'm trying to improve on these things, but mainly I just put puns or like pictures of dogs that I like online, and then I'm like, this is not good for my brand.
and did you were you watching movies and stuff when you were young? Were you not allowed to watch like movies or that kind of thing? Oh.
It wasn't as full on as like that beautiful film Cinema Paradiso, where you couldn't see anything but, like,
Mm.
like all the kisses and stuff. But Yeah, it was kind of like that. I remember sneaking downstairs late at night and Queer as Folk was on TV and I wasn't allowed to watch it because there was gay men in it and my mum was really anti uh, just human sexuality. She was anti-human sexuality and so that was a bit naughty and risque and I remember watching that and I remember Channel 4 used to be really punk and anarchic. It's not so much anymore, but they had a performance artist, David Hoyle, really late night on Channel 4 and it was the first time I'd ever seen anyone in drag and I was just like, what is happening? Like it was so exciting. But yeah, no, mainly we couldn't, just Disney stuff you were allowed. So like, you know, I grew up thinking that I was like, I thought I was someone else. Like the only other person that I knew that was brown was Pocahontas, and she's Native American. She's not even, and she was based on the face of a white lady. So you know.
Does that mean that when you did start seeing all these films, was it like kind of blowing your mind at a late stage in your life, like? Or...
Yeah, and I think there's a thing about repression where like it sort of sends you in the direction that you weren't supposed to go in, right? Which is like you become super like obsessed with stuff, and like I think I was probably quite intentionally rebellious when I left home in a way that maybe if I'd been exposed to stuff I wouldn't so much. But I sort of got tattoos really young and like wanted to like have different types of relationships and like was really open to polyamory and like meeting new people and like living this proper like hippie spiritual life like in Bristol, where it's like the land of, you know, the land of hippies, you know, there's quite an alternative spirit in Bristol. So it was great for me in that sense. I used to live with a lot of other families that I would rent from and they would always kind of, you know, I'd end up in a drum circle naked, basically, let's put it that way. And I think it was a big part of you know, it's just like freedom. And now it's really interesting as you age how you like, now nothing really shocks me, but I'm also quite boring and a bit uptight. Like I'm sort of starting to go back to maybe somewhere in between those two spaces where I'm just like, yeah, stop showing off, you don't need to shag everyone, shut up, you know. Like it's weird how like I still have these like latent things from my past coming back. Like do you have any of that with Catholicism or?
I'm quite open-minded. I've got a couple of kids. Well, they're like, and my daughter's at 19 and my son's 20. So I was kind of open-minded with them, and yet at the same time aware of the dangers of drugs and things like that, but not uptight about it.
Did you ever do drugs?
Yeah, I did lots of them. Yeah.
So you had a wild phase too. I did a lot of drugs. Yeah, I never mentioned the drugs part. I just mentioned all the sort of nudity and weird hippie music. But yeah, that was definitely a thing that I did. I count myself lucky that, you know, I had a bit of a Bill Hicks experience where I was just like, this is great. I'm really lucky because some people that I knew did completely, at circus school, did completely go bonkers and really harm themselves. And I think I got quite lucky that I never became addicted and I didn't take it so far that it was very festival-y for me. I took drugs to experience altered states in a festival environment, so not like every day. It wasn't like...
Yeah, and I'm the same. I was lucky not to be ever addicted. And always kind of self-aware that I shouldn't go too far and stuff. But listen, Charlie, we're actually running out of time here. I could talk to you all day, but the meeting's going to run out. And before that happens, I need to ask you if you could recommend, because you were recommended by Katie Pritchard, actually.
Yeah, what a sweetheart. I've definitely died on my ass in front of her a couple of times, so that's nice.
I love your stuff, by the way. Oh, so we've got less than... Can you recommend somebody quickly before we run out?
Fatiha El-Ghorri. Yeah. I'm going to recommend, and I can connect you with her, but she's really, really hilarious and she has me howling, and it would be great for her to have this time and space to promote anything that she's working on. Yeah, she's super, super funny.
Oh, brilliant.
Like, terrifying.
So I'll contact you and you'll put me in contact with her, yeah? Yes,
I will do that. And thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I know I waffle on, but it's really nice to find out about you and your work. I will have to check out your web series and stuff that you're doing.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a link when it's edited together. Thanks. It was really nice talking to you, Charlie. And I love your work. You're amazing.
Bye.
Bye.